Little bit of reverb.
Okay.
And we're live.
Oh shit. Okay. Okay, I believe we're live, and we've had some bit struggle getting off to a start, but finally we're all here. So what I'm going to do, I think we're going to start with guided meditation by Mar, to get us all balanced, all in tune, all in sync. It's going to be about 10 minutes. I don't know, around about that amount of time. It will just get us all sort of in the mood, and yeah. So if everyone just kind of gets comfortable where you are. This is Wave of Action, by the way, spiritual wave of action. Wave of insight, maybe. We could call it Wave of Insight. What do you reckon? Wave of Insight. Yeah. Wave of Wisdom. Wave of Consciousness.
Conscious wave.
Conscious wave. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Conscious wave of wisdom. Conscious wave of wisdom.
Yeah, we don't need to over-egg it, do we?
I can't even say it. Conscious wave of divine wisdom.
Bloody hell. That's a mouthful. Put people off. Wave of constipation.
Oh dear.
What about wave of mutilation?
Wave of what?
I think it's a Pixie song. I think it's sending out the wrong message. Forget I ever said it.
Okay, let's just start with a meditation, shall we? And I think we've just got ahead of ourselves, right? Okay, you ready, Emily? Okay. Yes, they do. Right. Okay. So we'll start. Okay, so just rest comfortably how you are. No need to take any specific posture. Just be comfortable. Just sit comfortably. And just bring attention to awareness. Just be aware that you are aware in this moment now. Usually we're so focused on content, on this piece of information or that object or another person or our own thought, or usually our own thoughts. But we're just going to be completely focused on the fact that we are aware. Be aware of awareness. Just be aware of awareness right now. not any thought or image of ourselves. We don't need to have an image. We might want to shut our eyes and just be aware of awareness. Thoughts may come up, there may be feelings, sensations in the body. That's okay, let them be there. Don't try and get rid of anything or manipulate anything or change anything about your experience. This is not an effort of the mind, it's a relaxing of the effort that we're often engaged in everyday life, an effort to try and present ourselves in some way or to achieve something. It's just a complete relaxation of any effort, and by paying attention to awareness we may notice how very effortless it is. I mean, ask yourself the question right now, are you making any effort to be aware? Just rest with that at the moment, that question. Does it require any effort to be aware? Or phrase it another way, does awareness require any effort to be here, present, now? Awareness just is, it's just here. You're not having to do anything, you're not having to think anything. Awareness to just rest as it is. It just is as it is. And that's your own natural being. There may be sounds, there may be, some, it depends on whether you've been meditating for a long time or not. There may be some thoughts that come up, surface, maybe some feelings or sensations. Again, we're not following any of that, we're just being aware of awareness. And what we're going to do now is we're going to bring attention to something, our immediate circumstance, our immediate situation, and something that can really help us anchor in the here and now, anchor our awareness and bring our attention away from the inner dialogue, the mind, the thoughts, is bringing attention to our breath. So just be aware now of the breath. There's no need to change the breath or to breathe in any sort of special way. There needs to be no breathing acrobatics of any sort. Just let it be. Just notice how just naturally and automatically breath is taken in and breath is expelled out, exhaled. You might notice sensations as the air is taken in and the lungs fill up. You might track the movement of the diaphragm, the belly area just beneath the ribs. And as the air fills up, the rising of the chest cavity, and then the falling as the air is breathed out. But just be more focused on the sensation really than anything else. Just bring attention to that. How often do we breathe? How many times do we breathe every day and we don't even realise it? And that's how much of people's lives are on autopilot. They don't even pick up their sandwich for work and their mind's racing with a million things and they haven't even savoured the food. So this is savouring the breath. And I find this very, very satisfying. We take this for granted. There are many people in this world who have massive breathing difficulties, COPD, these kinds of issues, and this can be really actually beneficial for those kinds of conditions as well. Asthma, just really paying attention, just very every movement, every sensation, breathing slowly. Notice the sensations in the nose as air is breathed in. Coolness of the air as the air travels up the nostrils. And as you're breathing out the mouth, the warmth of the air as it comes out now. So we're going to do really refine our attention down to specific parts of the breath now. We're going to focus on the tummy area, the diaphragm. This is where air starts to be drawn in. Just notice how the diaphragm, the abdomen rises as air is taken in. Notice how it falls as the air is breathed out. So just focusing on this tummy area as the air is brought in. And noticing it as it falls when the air is breathed out. If your mind takes you away somewhere, then don't worry about it, just bring it back to this sensation, this specific sensation in the abdomen area where the rising, slow falling of the abdomen, the diaphragm area, as air is taken in and air is breathed out. You're not fighting with your thoughts, no need to fight with them. You get caught up in them, that's fine. That's what the mind does, it's like a spinning wheel, it's gained momentum over many years of your life to give attention to thoughts. But here we're just using our consciousness consciously by bringing it attention to our most immediate direct experience and unraveling that years and years of conditioning, years of inner dialogue, years of egoic accumulation of identification with things and ideas and this need to be something and to be somebody. Just bring attention to your most immediate direct experience. It's actually very, very peaceful. It's very, very calm. We don't need to struggle with our mind. Just let that be as it is. Bring attention to the rising of the diaphragm, the falling of the diaphragm. We can use the term belly. Same thing. Now bring attention to the rib cage. So the air is taken in, you notice the belly first rises and then the rib cage starts to expand. Then as air is breathed out, it falls, contracts. So air is taken in, expansion. Air is breathed out, sensation of contraction. In, expansion. Out, contraction. Now to the final part of the sensations in our upper body area. Notice how the chest rises towards the end of the breath. So we start with the belly area where the air begins, it's drawn in. the rib cage area expands, and then the chest in the final part of the breath rising, and then chest falls, rib cage contracts, belly lowers. Track the whole movement. Track the whole movement from the belly, the rib cage, and the chest. Chest, rib cage, belly as you breathe out. Belly, rib cage, chest as you breathe in. Chest falling, rib cage, belly as you breathe out. So now just notice any sensations that are going within the body. Just have an overall awareness that there are sensations, that they appear without you having to think about or do anything about it. Sensation of the connection you have with the seat. Any sensations of breeze or heat or coolness. Just be aware again that you are aware. That all this experience that is happening now, the sound of my voice, the sensations of the body, the breath takes place within consciousness, takes place within awareness, It doesn't take place outside of you. It takes place within you, all of it. And that there's nothing that you need to do for all of this just to take place. There's no struggle. So in a moment we're going to just open our eyes and just be gentle with ourselves. And just continue just to be aware as we are. Okay. Thanks very much for joining me in that. I feel decidedly more spiritual. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm not sure quite. Like there's a delay in what I'm hearing, so I'm not sure why. That's better, I think.
Just had Chris.
Yeah, it's much better. I'm not getting the feedback now.
Hello.
Hello.
I heard all that. I did. It dropped out, but I heard it all until you asked us to come back round and open our eyes, and then I looked up and it said that the hangout had stopped. But I came back in, but I heard it all. I don't know what happened there.
You dropped right out. You
I fell out mid through it as well, same thing.
I didn't. It was still going on though. I could still hear everything that you was guiding us through, so I didn't miss anything. That was really cool.
Nice one. How you feeling, Simon? How you feeling, Simon?
I'm feeling good. I had to break it up because my blower was about 3% charge.
Okay.
So I had to, because it's knackered, so I had to develop an increasingly elaborate system of elastic bands to keep the charger in place.
Ah.
Yeah. So, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I think it's a fine tool.
Brilliant. So, what are we going to talk about?
Well, P's going to come back in and she's going to need to do her headphones again. But apart from that, I need to get my dead leg on.
Okay.
Because that keeps happening. I am doing that right now as I balance and stretch.
What you want to get is one of them little cushions that I bought. They're like little meditation cushions. You got a cushion there. The chair's good. The chair's always good because then you don't get a dead leg.
I get dead legs. I've got bad legs. Just like where I start sitting down and like where I used to kick everyone in the face. I guess just like sitting here for too long. Oh, yeah. Talk, chat. Well, I've had a really busy weekend this weekend. Friday night, I was working and I'd been watching the debate in the Commons, and then I went to work, and then I heard that the vote was going on and that we was going to go into carry on bombing Iraq, and so I found out there was going to be people at Parliament Square, so I trundled off up there and had an experience at the time. I got to do something completely different yesterday. I got to be with my boy and my friends in a gaming convention. So it was just full of lights and sound and information and just really wow kind of stuff. So a complete different kind of feeling. And then today, seeing everything that's been going on in Hong Kong. So it's been a really weird weekend. But the weirdest thing that I wanted to say was that on Friday night, I had, in the space of 20 minutes, I had 3 conversations that spanned what I believe is just the common consciousness of the moment. You know, the 3 kind of variant ideals that are out there. So I was on the train coming home from Parliament, and there's a couple of lads. Obviously, I'd been out having a laugh, and I had a "Don't Bomb Iraq" sign with me, and they asked what it was, and I explained, and we had a discussion, and they said, well, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not bothered about it. So I was like, all right, okay, you know, fine. I go out the train station, I walk across the bridge, and I bump into some street pastors that were filming something for someone. They didn't tell me what they was filming for, but they had on their jacket "Street Pastors," and they saw the sign and they asked what it was and where I'd been, and I explained to them. And at no point did they try to influence me with their consciousness of their thoughts and beliefs of their religion or anything of that. It was just purely someone walking along that they wanted to have an experience with and a moment of a conscious connection, and they was really understanding, and we agreed on many issues. So I stayed there for about 10 minutes. I said my goodbyes, and then I walked into the high street, and I got heckled by some really, really bad drunk people that were asking me, what's that sign say? So I held it up, and And then it came out of fuck you, all these Muslims and all this, pure hatred, just nothing but spite and hatred. And then I had the threat of violence put against me, and by 3 guys, and just within that space of 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just hit every single illusion of what consciousness is in this current paradigm at the moment, from people that know but are just ambivalent to it, to the people that are conscious at the moment and living and trying to do something about it, and those that just are completely detached from reality. So that was the one thing out of the last couple of days that really just hit me. And I came home and tried to do what you said, like, just relax and not dwell on it, but be, insightful about what can I learn from that. What was it that triggered these events? What happened? What could I have done? Is there any, and then just forget about it, because it was just that. So yeah,
and it's great. It's great actually. Them situations. I think I've mentioned something. I've responded to your sharing of the experience of that, and it's great when we have them experience. We think that meditation we must be feeling peaceful, but these situations can be real triggers to bring us back to help us be with whatever that experience is. And so where there's a feeling, a situation where you feel that you're under threat, you can just be present with that, the sensations in the body, and then you're not so sort of forced into immediate reactivity, that we, people are so often launched into. We can make more wiser choices about what we do, and the mind might say, oh, I really want to smack this guy, he's really pissed me off, and just being with that sensation in the chest, you just kind of a higher sort of intuition comes in, which just either makes you move on, or in some cases, if something comes your way, you may need to defend yourself. It's not a case of, spirituality means we just completely lay down and take a beating, because that's not spirituality either. It's about responding to the context and the needs of the moment, isn't it? And I think you've done a grand job. There was no need to kind of rise to the egoic stimulation there. It was easier just to kind of walk off and neutralize that drama. And that's what we can do when we're fully conscious, and we can neutralize that drama and not add to it and contribute more to it. Good job, man. Are you feeling quite chilled, Simon? Has anyone knocked you this week?
Well, only you, Dave.
Well, we've got a tool for that. You can write me down on your naughty list.
About that particular mechanism, yeah. I need to employ that a bit more and a bit more readily. I think a bit more promptly, a bit more thoroughly, fearlessly. But no, you didn't really. I think that's what Chris is saying there is. Obviously, if these guys, I don't know what I was like when I was drunk, I'm not really sure that I ever had a sort of genuine opinion. Nothing that was like, properly reflected on at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great. Yeah, all this.
I think the only thing that you find with people that have taken the partaking of alcohol, which I do not mind, because there's different variants of people that can handle it, but the majority of the time that you currently in this paradigm is a state of confrontation more than anything else, and that's what I felt at that moment. But like Dave said, the reality of that moment was the old me would have gone, well, fuck it, I'm going. I would have snapped back. But as soon as I felt that it was no need for this confrontation, before the 2 other gentlemen came along, I'd already consciously made that decision that this was just end the conversation there. This is not
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't. It's hard work.
Whereas before I would have argued. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, because I was thinking, you're right. I mean, people do tend to get very sort of aggressive, and they can get very confrontational and start saying obviously things they wouldn't necessarily say or wouldn't necessarily do in drink. But one of the things when I drink, I think it was a low level spirituality.
Pete, your headphones are reverbing. Just every time Pete goes out and comes in, our headphones go a little bit funny. So
I'm serious. It's really disconcerting.
Yeah. So start that again.
I was just saying. I absolutely agree. I was just thinking about those sort of like connectedness and things, and it had occurred to me. I don't know what I was thinking of, but when I mean, sort of immediate, this. I think a very ready. Was born with a sort of automatic, natural sense of sort of separation and alienation, and sort of feeling fragmented, really. And booze, for a while, very much alcohol, gave me a sense of unity. And looking back, I think Jung, Mr. Jung talks about this as a low-level search for spirituality. So in the very early stages of my drinking, this sense of connectedness, this sense of ease and comfort. Very little that I craved, really, that I wanted. It's almost, a sort of peace of mind. And then after a while, it was, the very thing that gave me that peace of mind and that ease and that comfort and that sense of connectedness and unity. Started doing that absolutely the opposite. I started feeling more anxious, more fearful, more disconnected, much more likely to act in the way that Chris has just described with those two guys. So on a sort of scale, what relevance this has got is what's occurring to me, and then as a spiritual solution to this became more apparent. I started working this. That gives me what booze used to. In a lot of ways, it does. It gives me what alcohol used to do. That sense of ease and comfort and a sense of oneness. I don't know.
So I guess that's what we're all kind of looking for, isn't it? And
at some level, whether you know it or not, yeah.
It's just unrelated, depending on our interpretation of how the world works. And if we've got a very limited sense of self, as I used to have a very limited sense of I am this body, this mind, and I need this to get to have peace, to have joy. But and alcohol was very much a massive part of things for me to try and get that sense of ease and comfort, and it then becomes a double-edged sword, like you say. So
well, I think I mean, you and I, Dave, I know, so I can't speak obviously for Chris or Pete, but it's like you can't live with it and you can't live without it. So what do you do? Well, fortunately, there's a third way sort of thing. But I was just thinking back what Chris is saying about this non-reaction, the sort of resist not evil, and all this resistance of so-called evil, these jihadists. It strikes me that if we look, I mean, history tells us there will always be another jihadist, there will always be another IS under this. You think you're fighting, but you're creating more of the same. And of course, it's easy for us to say, but the realpolitik is just like, well, what do we expect them to do? It's not unreasonable. I mean, I think that it's a non-starter, but the politicians can do little else, as Chris says, within this particular paradigm. They really don't have many options, because they would say, oh well, what do we do then? Do we let IS just do X, Y, and Z? And the public would be outraged. We can't have that. And there was only about 43 people, I think, that voted against the action, was there not? And that's across the political spectrum. Not just a few Labour lefty type characters. It's just like So I think to expect things to be different within a particular structure is going to lead to a very considerable amount of disappointment. So, what do we do then? Because I mean, just like you were saying, Dave, this is a spirituality. It's not a case for it's a case for acceptance, but it's not a case for passivity. And I suspect I've been far too passive in many ways.
You going, P? You going? You going, P?
Taking.
I'll go. Well, I, with the equation to, looking at that violent confrontation and relating it obviously to like some kind of bigger thing in thinking within a paradigm of some kind of substance that you're using to, like you say, alcohol does give you that oneness, does give you that kind of feeling of aware of your consciousness, but not in the correct way, because a substance is allowing you to perform something with the actions of the idea of, well, I'm drunk, so I'm not in control of my actions, whereas the spirituality side is you are fully conscious and aware of what's going on. If I had chosen at that moment to carry on, what would have happened? It would have been a case of, then there would have been a violent altercation, and like I said, nothing would have been solved. Nothing would have came from that situation of violence. It would have just perpetuated another aggressive scene along the line. Now, I don't know whether these guys will go on to do the same, but they didn't get the reaction they wanted. And if you don't get the reaction they wanted, are they going to go on to do that again, or are they going to stop?
I think
it's a case of...
Yeah.
Go. No, go, carry on.
Were you saying something, Dave, or did I?
No, I was just going to say, actually, because it kind of brings me back to, I've just been watching that I Am, Tom Shadyac. I know you watched that this week as well, and it talks about, what's wrong with our world and how do we change it. And so I've just been watching the part about change, and this still seems relevant to this chat now about do we go steaming in with bombs and stuff. Probably not the greatest of ideas. I think, anyone knows that just antagonises and inflames the situation and gets more people who are upset with governments to sign up to, kind of violent extremism. So, what's talked about in I Am is really, really good documentary. Check it out. It's on YouTube. When it gets to the part towards the end about how do we change things, it says we need to start with ourselves. Starts with consciousness and our understanding of ourselves. And if we change ourselves and our own perceptions, that changes, has influence on the world around us. So it refers to things, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Some really beautiful stuff actually about Martin Luther King and how he talks, about how the way you perceive the enemy, in his case it was, the people of the white Americans that were persecuting the black African Americans, and he says you have the power to liberate them by following the path of love. You give them the opportunity to become and get in touch with their own humanity. So it was about reframing the way you perceive the enemy, and that's something that's had massive impact for me. Like, it's always you build this image of the person that you've taken resentment towards, for example, and they become a massive demon, and you can't really, you get a very narrow interpretation of what this person is. And this is what happened to is happening to the Palestinian people, objectified by media propaganda. People learn to objectify them as these, brutes and primitive people, and you get a very specific negative image of the person in your mind, and then it fuels. This is what's happening in our own newspaper. It fuels this kind of sense of, must kill them, must quash them, and bomb them into shit, and you don't really have any sense of kind of, measured sort of perspective on things. So yeah, it's not about kind of being completely passive, like you say, but it's about developing a different different, more holistic perspective of
It is.
the other.
You're right, Dave. I think it is phenomenally disarming because people don't. Because actually, I remember someone saying, it was Sean actually, and Dave knows him, but you saying, you react with love, and people don't know what to do with it.
Mm.
They're confused because they're expecting more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it is entirely diffusing.
Mm-hmm.
And
the way that love manifests, it may be different in different situations, but it starts with recognizing that, that person isn't the sum total of the thought that you have about them. They are not the sum total of that negative thought that you have about them. They were once a child. They were, they once played and had beautiful, relationships. Hopefully, certainly not always the case, but they weren't always this image that, comes.
Well, how do you have that, P? Because you are predominantly in a male household. How does that work? Because like these points that we're coming through is quite of a male idea. Your microphone.
Is that better?
yeah,
I'm just used to it. I just live in the moment, so I don't really let things affect me anyway. So I try to contemplate, but not to take. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and everybody thinks that their opinion's right. And I don't necessarily believe that it's my job to prove that I'm right. Sometimes you just let it go. Let them draw their own conclusions and learn their own lessons. I mean, we try to help people as much as possible and give them a bit of guidance, but ultimately, unless you learn for yourself, you're not really going to listen anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's true in my case. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
See that? Look, completely different. Look, there's three guys talking, and then like the woman comes in and just bang. There you go. There you go. That's that. There you go. Completely see that different view of completely a different perception to how we would look at it as three men describing a situation where it's confrontational. Whereas P straight away as a woman would have gone, no, I'm just going to leave it straight away. Whereas I had to think and stop. Whereas a woman would have been. In P's case, this is how I deal with it. You've got to learn
we've had conversations before though, where I've said, our knowledge is minuscule. Our knowledge is tiny. What we actually know, for fact, is knowledge. Our beliefs are something different. A belief is not knowledge, because when you say I believe something, you've got a little bit of doubt there. When you say I know something, you know it. And without having the whole world's information to hand, you can only make an opinion when you're looking at things. You can only form an opinion on the evidence that you've got. So without all knowledge, everything is an opinion. So we all have to deal with ISIS. We know that. What they're doing is terrible. Whether bombing them is not going to create more terrorists is something completely different. Because I think it's just going to be a continual cycle taking that action. So you can help the actual people who have faced this on the doorstep. You've got fighters, and you've got people in Syria that we could have aided a bit better. And we could also do a lot more refugee work, which is outreach work, rather than just bombing civilians and creating more hate. I don't think that that's the way.
No, me neither.
No,
I think George Galloway's speech was spot on.
I linked it to you. I was watching it. And he got alright. It's shouty George Galloway. He does like a little bit of a shout. I won't lie about that. And his words were spot on. He described it all and made you think and realise of it's about 17 to 20,000 people with the size of Great Britain. What's going on here? What's all that about? Why do we need to be doing this in an area that's not even viable for the actual stronghold of the enemy? It's an illusion. Think about what's going on. If he's telling you to think, be conscious, don't dwell. This is a quick little strong message, a 7-minute speech. I'll give the link to P and
yeah, cool.
It's quite a poignant one because P linked me David Cameron's speech.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And that's quite interesting because there's a couple of connotations in there, and we never listen to politicians because it's always double speak and it's always this, and it's never in the moment. There's always an alternative view to what they're saying, and they
chosen very wisely.
Yes, they are chosen very wisely, very, and he makes a clear distinction between foreign and domestic terrorism, and saying that extreme ideas and critical thought and being able to criticize but in a constructive way shouldn't be done, and our government should be against this and we should rile against this. That's just a stamp down on the current conscious that is awakening,
But that's why, because they're beginning to lose a lot of information online, so they don't want people questioning 9/11, they don't want questioning 7/7. He actually mentioned those in the speech.
Yeah, yeah.
Go on. I just think it's shocking. Well, it's not, because we know that they're all self-serving, but it's frightening. Freedom of speech. And then when they're talking about ISIS terrorists, I always look at activists as well, because whenever, like, Theresa May's talking about these new laws that they're bringing in, there's always that and other extreme groups. Now, when you're talking about other extreme groups, animal rights protesters have been classed as extremists. And you're saying that you want to put these people in a deprogramming camp. That's got very dangerous connotations for activists. If that's, not necessarily straight away, but in time to come. In America, a lot of free men are already classed as domestic terrorists by the FBI. You start getting that sort of label put on you, and you start being silenced and taken off to, like, some place to get deprogrammed. Mind control. It's like, what? Come on. Can you not just... Yeah, it is. But it's in the war on terror, just everything. Freedom is slavery.
It's the idea of the war on terror, I believe, is the war on knowing. It's because if we keep the word itself, terror, it's terror. It's like, watch out, because it's what? Sorry, hold on. Straight away, you're talking about a primal kind of connotation straight away. The hairs on the back of your neck. Well, if you've got hair on your head, that is. I do apologise, Dave. But that thought-provoking thing to install something into you to make you feel completely defensive and not be critical in the way that you think, completely reliant on someone else. Because if you're fearful, you're not aware of your circumstances or aware of the situation that you are in. You are projecting to somewhere else. You're not in that moment. You are looking for information.
Yeah, and that labelling, using the term terror and then putting, conspiracy, what you've labelled conspiracy, using any label really, and tying that into this term terror is then going to have that response in people that objectifies anyone who conveys those kinds of alternative views as something to be feared, as the enemy, as akin with these terrorists who have got the balaclavas on and are beheading people. And I think that I think really is the fact that you referred to 9/11 conspiracy theorists as in that camp as non-violent extremists actually shows that they're very, very fearful, I think, of the power. They're very fearful of the power within the information sharing that people have available at their fingertips. What made me laugh though is that actually he's putting over 2,000 architects and engineers, professional people, right, who've signed up. I don't know if you've seen that one, the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, who are actually saying, look at the scientific evidence. They're not non-violent extremists. They're professional people who have said, look, examine the evidence. The official story is not how these buildings came down, and so it's actually putting people who are not weird conspiracy nuts that live in the deep south and I saw aliens in my backyard. It's not. It's putting those kinds of people in. Go on, mate.
Just take the rise. But what was I going to say? Yeah, it's also. I read a bit of a book once called Writing Moral Terror, and it's about how Bush and his cohorts had consciously written, they'd constantly created a written discourse which went binary, good and bad, and framing and repetition, which is a key aspect of the broken record thing. And how he'd got together, he'd researched his PhD, I think, and he'd researched it, and he'd got all of Bush's speeches and what he'd said and what other people of his ilk had said, and there were all these striking similarities, the same phrases over and over again, the same positioning as this bad, me bad, he's bad, I'm good, he's bad, I'm good, and this constant feeding, this constant repetition, to the public to create a framework in which they could then justify doing whatever they wanted to do, which is what they did do.
Sorry, carry on.
No, go on, Ben.
I was going to say, do you think, and ultimately, it's like smoke and mirrors, because they use words like terrorists, like for conspiracy theorists or Freeman and things like that, but actually, most of them come from a place of love and consciousness. So it's their fear of the light, if you like. If they're the dark and their capitalistic ways and the evil of the world, and they know that the light, knowledge, is what will wipe them out. If we just stop complying, if we vote with our money, we'll shape the way that corporations react, because they'll always chase what's in our pocket. If we say we aren't buying any more slave labour, you can bet your bottom dollar that they'll rush out and start paying decent wages, because they still want what's in your pocket. So this, the word terrorists, when most activists I see, they are just pure love. You know what I mean? That they are of a well-balanced place. They're not judgmental normally. They normally embrace people from many different walks of life, very inclusive of everyone, rather than being like, oh, he's poor, he's got mental problems, he's got this problem. A lot more open, and that must be their fear, because we'll spread. Mm-hmm. Once people realise that they're not alone.
I think with the power of the internet and now enabling people to become connected, and like you say, whatever difficulty you have, whatever ailment or if you want to call it a disability you have a neutralizer, you have an equal playing field, and that's not happened in human history for a long time. It's not happened to the fact of, right, well, I can sit here and converse with someone, and it's not I'm not having any preconceived judgments upon you, because I'm only interacting with you in the moment, and I'm being conscious with you at that second in time. I'm listening to what you have to say, and you're being honest and truthful. If they are, you can never tell. But with the aids of technology of what we have now, I can see your expressions, you can see mine, you can feel what I mean and my passion or my sincerity. And if I can see that across a globe, whereas these guys have to be controlled. They have a repetition, like Steve was saying. It was just this constant repetition. Sorry, Simon was saying that I've seen that what you talk about with the rise of the neocons and Rumsfeld and Cheney, and they stuck to this script. They stuck to it. They read dosh, and then we can see it again.
It can be very convincing, though. I mean, I was watching David Cameron, and sometimes you think you do question yourself. You think, have I really got this right? Is my, I think you still need to have that questioning of yourself and say, have I got it completely wrong? And then, but then you have to go with some sort of, you have to go with what your inner instinct is telling you about this situation. And it's okay.
It took me twice on that on that speech to do it. P pointed it out and said, right, I want you to have a look at this. So I took a look at it, and I didn't see anything really bad into it. And I was like, well, what points did you? Because I didn't really see that.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, go back and watch this and take a look at this part. And like you say, you're doubting yourself. You're like, well, hold on a second. And it's not a case of being brainwashed or anything like that. It's an actual case of go back and take a look at it.
Yeah, wanting to be honest and not just kind of think, oh, well, I can't listen to anything this person's got to say because it's this person. It's about trying to, I think what's important for me is to try and be objective and try and see the good, but, like
But I think that's also another one of their fears nowadays, is that we do look at both sides and we do make educated arguments. And they did a big study on conspiracy theorists, and they said that actually they were less aggressive when trying to win the argument because they had facts to back them up, whereas people that were, oh no, that's a conspiracy theory, they were a lot more aggressive in attacking the people. Right. Yeah. And they lacked the research. So the study showed that actually conspiracy theories were more intelligent and more reserved than the non-conspiracy theories, and that's because.
Sorry,
can I get you links?
Yeah, get the links. That study would be great.
I can totally accept that. That would seem quite reasonable to me. What you're saying there, P. Definitely. I mean, I think it's important, not, as you say, Cameron. I don't think he's an evil buffoon. But what he is he's coming from a particular place, and he's unlikely to absorb many new radical ideas because of the position he's in. He's not in he's not in the business.
Whoa, Simon. Simon, not radical views. That's a danger there by saying, sorry to interrupt you, but radical to what their perception is still nothing, because it's not radical at all. It's a normal human instinct to be able to question things.
But Chris, he believes is true for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's radical in terms of in terms of a root difference, as far as he's concerned. So he's unlikely, isn't he? I'm not saying, I'm not coming out on the side of Mr. David Cameron by a long chalk, believe you me.
I didn't say you was. I don't know why.
I mean, he would. But I'm saying, he would say that, wouldn't he? Because he's not in a position to say much else. Otherwise, he has a particular conservative ideology to defend, doesn't he?
And a lot of invested interest, big businesses that are set to make a lot of money from the weapons deals and things like that. The countries that are going to have a boosting economy from it. Even Britain will reap some benefits, as well as all that rebuilding and shit that needs to be done. There's going to be a lot of investment, and then Tory donors on the backbench going, oh yeah, get over there.
But I think you're right, Pete. Just something that's occurred to me is I remember Toller was talking about how the collapse of communism, and it all seemed so desperately unlikely, pretty well up to the point that it just happened and the wall came down, and these huge, great, what seemed like this impenetrable, massive, monolithic affair that was going to go on for I don't know how long, suddenly bang, the whole shebang just fell. And I think we might have to see a series of these a structure on outside and then an internal level, for there to be a real shift, a real, as you talked, alluding to, Chris, a real paradigmatic shift.
I think we'll get
something fundamentally new. Because
I think they're happening now.
Working.
I think once we collapse, and we will financially collapse, a lot of people think there'd be rioting and things like that, but I have a bit of faith in human nature that whenever we've hit hard times before, communities have banded together. They have fought wars together. You know, a village would fight the next clan that was going to fight them. And in the in the war, you had like people growing stuff all the time, didn't you? They were for Britain and things like that. We are a lot more resourceful than we think. We just haven't had to be resourceful for a long, long time. We've, you know, had it pretty cushy. And there will be opportunists that will probably loot and riot and things, but on the whole, I think communities will come together.
Brilliant. And this brings us back to actually what I hoped for this conversation, quite nicely, actually, in a very natural, organic way, is that what is this, you know, what is the humankind's basic nature? And it's talked about in the movie documentary I Am, where Tom Shadyac goes, you know, he has this accident and it's, you know, epiphany that he wants to ask these questions. What is our most basic human nature? And he starts off from in quite a bit of a, you know, a negative one, but actually, you know, when things get really difficult, what we see is that, you know, people do rally together. And you know, the cooperation, not competition. And I think the capitalistic values have been ingrained in us for such a long while, that it creates this separation and division, this clutching for material well-being, you know, and you know, survival of the fittest, all this old scientific theory of Darwin, which was very much distorted. Actually, you know, in that movie, it talks about what the word survival of the, I think the term survival of the fittest was used a couple of times, whereas the word love appeared in Darwin's work. I can't remember what
90 or 94 times, I think he said.
About 95 times. So it's like who's kind of engineered that perspective of Darwin, you know, to kind of say, well, you know, the laws, the market laws are all about domination and competition, and you know, and our whole science, you know, whole sort of scientific paradigm is built on this sense of, well, certainly, you know, Darwinian theory and Newtonian physics is built on this sense of, like, you know, for, you know, things to have any effect on each other have to have some physical contact. But, you know, I think in terms of what we're understanding about, you know, quantum physics, I know you mentioned quantum physics before, P, is that actually there's the recognition that everything is connected on a deep level, that to have, you know, some effect on, you know, other people or some emotional impact, you know, on another person, doesn't, you know, some sort of telepathic connection doesn't require, you know, communication through the normal sort of sensory, you know, processes. So all this kind of information is coming out, and you know, and people are, you know, waking up because of it, because they realise that actually, you know, the world isn't what's been painted. There, you know, there is a, you know, there is.
These are the results of convoluted stories that we told ourselves. Absolutely.
I had a debate with my brother because he says communism will never work because of the human condition. And I was like, but the human condition is because of society's restraints. You know, the average person in their hearts wants a family, wants to be loved, wants to be healthy, happy, and then see the world. Right now, some people might have pressures put on them that make them have other extreme views that aren't so nice. But really, the majority of people, that is what they want. They want peace and love. It's a very low number that would seek to go out and murder somebody. It's like saying that it's law that stops people from doing things. And no, it's not. I don't kill someone because it's not in my heart to want to do that. Not, you know, a murderer will do it regardless of the law. So, you know, I really think that that's something we should think about a lot, is that we can be very harsh judge of humanity. But humanity has a lot of social pressures on it at the moment, a lot. And that's, you know, if you think about energy and frequency and things like that, you think about how bad some of the conditions are for some people in this world. And plus with the fear that we're constantly thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? Like, am I right, or am I reading too much into things? All of that is having negative effects on energies and things like that. If we focus a bit more on the things that we are doing right, like how we are coming together, how we're sat here tonight doing this, and the other things, that they're positive, and that's sending out more positive vibes. And you know, we can look at a lot of doom and gloom on our timelines. We really can.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Pete's right. I think a lot of it is about, you know, things. Our reality will create by where we put the attention. Where do we consistently focus our attention? Because that's what you'll get more of the same. Definitely. And I mean, that's not to disregard the hideousness that these also.
No, absolutely not.
And you know, criticising inverted commas.
But I think what I've found about, you know, all of, you know, us speaking tonight is that we have that time to enjoy, to play, you know, and to you know, express, you know, loving relationships and connect with other people, you know, and have some sense of you know, detachment from sometimes the grossness of the world, sometimes the hideousness of it all. You know, and you find that in your, you know, your day-to-day interactions with people, and you know, certainly meditation is very important. You know, it's been vital for me in kind of getting some sense of balance.
Sorry, Dave. Go on. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, mate.
No, just to say, going back to that I Am documentary. There's one thing I remember was that I think someone approached the Dalai Lama and what he thought was the best course of action, and he said critical thinking followed by action, which I wouldn't necessarily have expected the Dalai Lama to say, but I think he's probably a little bit more sort of go-getting than I thought he was. But yeah, there was another point that's completely escaped me, but yeah, I mean, I just thought it was interesting. Yeah, he does promote the idea of actually.
Don't knock those short, small, bald men. Those short, small, bald guys, they know what's going on, like.
Well, I thought you might say, like, let it be.
Let it be,
like
by the Beatles. I like
thinking and actions. So now you've got to think about this shit. You know, there's all these sorts of stories, all these sorts of narratives, competing narratives. Have a bit of a look at them and see what you come up with, sort of thing, and then go from there.
I think the most enjoyable thing that we gain now from the guys of technology and the likes of chats like this is, like you say, Dave, is the playfulness of the free thinking, of not being trapped up or felt responsible, or that's the wrong word, not responsible, but as in there will be connotations to the way that you think. Being in a healthy environment where open discussion and thought is not denigrated against because of your ability to understand or contemplate something. The internet has proved to be an equalizer on that physically and mentally now, because we gauge with, I could be gauging with the, if I had a chance, I could gauge with the Dalai Lama. I could gauge with Dave down the road. I could chat to Bob across the road. You know, there is no limitation now in the way that we can convey our thoughts, and to have that, like you say, Dave, an open, playful discussion, and not be frightened and fearful of where that will go to.
And to be able to find people that think like you, because it could, before the internet, it was probably quite lonely trying to find other people that actually did think like you and didn't look at you like a nutter.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, totally. The ease, the accessibility.
Because I've met a few around my area, and I never would have, because we aren't in the same circles. We probably would never have met without the internet. And it's just nice to know that there's other people locally that are willing to take action and willing to come together and do community events and things. And whereas for a long time, I spent a long time thinking I was the only one who felt like I did. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've spent a long time thinking like that in another context. I have to say. And it was only with identification that you start to find, you know, a growing sense of belonging, don't you, and a part of rather than part from.
Yeah, and this whole sort of sphere, hasn't it, has allowed us to become a global community. You know, to communicate with each other. You know, you know, in ways where we did feel very separate by our nationalities and our nations, and we couldn't really, you know, now we can interact, you know, with people of all different colours, all different races and beliefs, and you know, in a very quick way. We've really got that. You know, that's one of the benefits of the internet, and being able to communicate and interact you know, with such ease.
And look at Gaza, in the stories straight out of Gaza, you know, in Syria, photos and things like that are coming out, being able to, you know, these things don't always make the news. I mean, Chris showed me something today. We didn't watch it because it was a bit too horrific, and that we were completely unaware of. It was it 4 or 5 women that were barely dressed, and they were headed by a Mexican cartel in a message to Obama. This was at the beginning of September. Now, this video showed everything. It wasn't like the Jihad John or whatever his name video. This was like a real horrific thing. Now, I haven't heard nothing of that in the news. You know, perspective what we're going to hear.
Well, we at Wave, we follow stories, and we pick up, if we're not out and doing stuff, or we can't get to things, we go to the keyboard side, we go to the keyboard warrior side, we bring information to people, we try to get it out as quick as possible, and try to be concise in our information. From last week, we had the incidents in Glasgow. We had, then on the Monday, we had Flood Wall Street, so we covered that. Then today we had the occupation, or in the last 3 days, but predominantly today, what's been going on in Hong Kong. And then all of a sudden, like I said, I saw this video and I checked the date on it, and I'd done a little bit of digging around and took a look. And then I thought, okay, I'll take a look at this video. And like Pete said, it was 4 women undressed, so the breasts were showing, held, tied behind their back, and they was forced to give an explanation at gunpoint. And this was nothing like you would have seen on this one guy, one man in a very specific place. This was a deliberate an attack, a message. I got to the point where it started to get very horrific, and I could not watch it. I couldn't watch it. It was that terrible. Now, whether that was a case, whether that was a case of it being women and violence portrayed against women has a different effect upon me, or the fact that it was just that horrific. But this was from September the 1st, and I follow. I play the internet. I troll the internet. I troll the internet for information. That is my game. I do that. I pass it on. And the shock that P hadn't seen this, I hadn't seen this, and you know, we spent a lot of time doing this kind of thing, and it was like, whoa, hold on, this has not been covered anywhere. This is terrible. Now, I saw recently the way that it was portrayed on some of the websites, it came from a predominantly conservative side, and saying, well, look, Obama's letting all these immigrants come in, and look, if you let these immigrants, this is what they're going to do. I saw a couple of documentaries on RT and Al Jazeera following what parents have been doing for their children and trying to send them across the border into America, and what they face in Mexico with these growing gang violence, sectarian, just these huge pressures, the choices that these parents were forced to make so that they wouldn't lose their children. And these guys were getting deported back, and they was coming back, and if they didn't go into the gang, they was getting killed. So this one video put everything into context for me, and to see that this has not been put out, to see that people have not been, this site has not been brought down, to say that no, you can't watch this. If you watch this, you're going to be classed as a terrorist, because that's what they was doing with the other videos that was out. If you watched those beheadings, you was classed as a terrorist. You were just on the same level. And forensics experts have said that they were staged, that
probably did the killing elsewhere. Now, that's the other thing. If these ISIS are so terrible, how come they didn't show a proper beheading video? I'm not saying that they're not terrible, because obviously they are, but, you know, if this was ISIS, you know, there's lots of theories about where it was. Why would they have any qualms about showing a proper beheading video like Saudi Arabia is full of them? And if we're going to war over beheading videos, why aren't we doing anything about other countries that are producing them? And that you know, shouldn't it be all beheading videos, not just the ones that affect England and what England want to do?
I think that just looking at the way that it was put into context and just seeing that, like, well, hold on a second, like you say, Peter, that we're happy to start bombing people for a couple of videos that was supposedly made. Nothing to do with the fact that 3 months ago we was happy to arm them. No denigration in that. Well, no, that didn't happen. No. They did get all those light Toyota trucks from anyone else that they know. No. It doesn't matter that they've got all control of the oil fields, and it doesn't matter that they've sold oil to the EU and Iraq, sold to Israel and Turkey. Yeah, nothing to do with that. No, not at all. But that's, I couldn't put it into context because, like you say, with Gaza, well, hold on a second. There was 2,000 people killed in Gaza. I don't see you rushing to bomb Israel. I don't see you rushing to do this. So why is there an importance for this? Why is this more important than that? Is there an alternative means to keep us perpetually filled with a terror ideal? Bringing back to that word, you know, fearful of the men in orange jumpsuits. You know, connotations back to Guantanamo Bay, seeing people in this, you know, repetition of images and similarities constantly through this growing narrative is becoming more and more alarming. But with people like us that are going to talk about it and bring things into context and be mindful about these situations, we can do something about it, I believe.
We shared a lot of stories out of Gaza, but one thing that we were quite wanting to do was show the human side, you know, point out the Palestinian artists, the Palestinian musicians, the cooks, the everyday people that are going about their everyday life, because it's very easy, you know, to just watch the news and see these little snippets and actually forget that, you know, they've got poets, they've preachers, they've got everything that we have, and we might not be able to relate to their lives, but their lives aren't actually that different to ours if we actually stop and take a look. And that's, I think, the internet being able to get that out, to show creative protests like the roof jumpers, the free jumpers in Palestine and things like that, to show that these are they are the same as us. We are one. They aren't different.
Absolutely, to see beyond the propaganda, which we're fed very narrow perspective of what, you know, these people good, these people bad, and this is the power of the internet in raising consciousness and seeing seeing people in a more holistic sense. I mean, you know, what really got me talking about, you know, the real humanness that we're able to see of the Palestinian people. You know, I remember seeing, when school started for the kids, you know, and it was like, well, these kids should be starting school, you know, come September. And I thought, crikey, you know, you've got a totally, you know, leveled environment, and you know, these are kids that would usually go to school and go to ballet and play football and go down the kebab shop. They kebabs in Gaza, do you think? Probably. You know, go down the kebab shop. Right?
Can't be that
bad. You know, and you know, it really kind of, you know, the internet is great because it helps you to see that these people aren't just this very, you know, people aren't just, you know, these kind of very rudimentary images that we are fed by, you know, the BBC and, you know, what I call the British bullshit corporation.
I think that's the main thing, though, isn't it? With that power of not creating that mainstream, breaking that narrative of constant repetition of the same ideals. You know, with the ability to meet people that are from different ethnicities, religions, race, creed, colour, whatever you want to put it. We'll break it down to humanism. Just like we get to see the real human side of people, not that portrayal of extreme violence that is made to look at this. This is the most terrible thing in the world. Just this, nothing else. Just this moment right here that you must focus on. Forget about everything that is around you. Don't be aware of anything that is around you. Don't listen to anything else apart from this one thing that you must be focused on at all times. And that constant line will just lead you down to a path of, well, nothingness, because that's where we're heading to with neoliberalistic capitalism ideals and yeah.
I was just
Right.
thinking. I was just thinking about when the people with balaclavas on were Irish a little while ago, and one of the chief negotiators, Jonathan Powell, I think, who had to deal with the likes of Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams and what have you, was saying one of the last things he said, I think I said to you, Dave, in his documentary, and they focused right in on his face, and it was the last thing he said pretty well. He says, "It's much more difficult to kill people when you know them." And this was, it seemed to me that this is the one piece, these extremely intellectualized sort of negotiating characters, and he was one of them. And this seemed to be the one piece of wisdom that he distilled from all of his time trying to prevent people from sanctioning more sectarian or murder.
Yeah, historians. I was going to say historians studying battlefields actually back that up, because they say that there is a phenomenal amount of soldiers that could not physically pull their triggers.
Absolutely. Or they aimed above their heads. Yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
or they just, like the old musket days, they just kept refilling and they never actually fired it. So, nowadays we've got war that is very much like you're on an Xbox game and not close to close, probably for that reason, because 50% of the soldiers probably couldn't do what they were paid to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, do you know what? I think it's been lovely to talk, but I think I'm going to have to get off. I don't know about everybody else. Does anybody have anything that they want to say? Any final words of wisdom?
No.
I've got one little bit that I missed out that I wanted to say to you earlier, because like Pete said about, like, she was talking to a brother about communism, and I always like to think of when communism kind of gets defunct, I always like to leave people with the one idea of working communism that worked profusely, and everyone either likes or dislikes in the narrative of television, and I like to put that connotation as the form of entertainment called Star Trek, because if you look at Star Trek, it basically is communism. It is a group of nations under one thing that goes out and follows in one ideal of exploration and knowledge and everything. But it's a cool communism. It's a nice one where we get to go and explore things and be nice to each other, and everyone gets what they want.
Best way.
I love Star Trek.
I've never heard anyone else ever justify being a Trekkie so convincingly. I'm on YouTube as soon as we get out of here. Yeah. I watched quite a bit of Star Trek, but I've never ever considered that. So I think it's really interesting.
Do you know what? I used to love Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart. He was my favourite.
Oh, he was a good boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was no mug.
William Shatner had a bit of an ego on him. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
Shatner, twat.
Yeah.
Watch Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine explains it all to you. Deep Space Nine, colony, big colony. That whole ideal. Yeah.
I never got into Deep Space Nine. Maybe I'll give it a go. Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Cool. Right. Well, hopefully very soon then we'll have a society like the Federation, where we're all just exploring together in conscious.
As long as I'm in skin tight lycra with a gold motif, I don't care.
I'm just
Finally, my hobby will become
picturing-
uniform.
Well, you got your cycling shorts.
That's true.
Next time we meet, next time
Mm.
we have a talk, get your cycling shorts on and a little badge, you know, a
God.
little federation badge, and we'll be there.
I don't think I can do that to you. I don't know you well.
Okay. I think we're about to go. I'm just going to finish off with the bowl, the resounding sound of the healing sound of the bowl, and thank you for joining us. Om Shanti, Namaste. Everything is one. Peace. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks.